Well, taxpayers are often required to materially participate in a farm business activity as a prerequisite to receiving a benefit. However, many farming activities are conducted by a tenant, leaving the landlord questioning the benefits that might be available. Well, Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law joins us now for a further look in today's Rural Money segment. Thank you so much, Roger, for being with us. Let's start with some background on the matter and the statutory modifications over the years.
Yeah, good to be with you, Tammy. And you're right in your opening comments that material participation is a very important concept for farmers with respect to many areas of tax. And it often comes into play, in particular, when there is a lease that's involved, because it's usually very easy to satisfy a material participation requirement if you're the direct farmer. But if somebody else is farming and you're the landlord, then can you satisfy the requirements to be deemed to be in a trade or business to get the associated tax benefit? And this really all went back to a case in the 8th Circuit in 1966 where we had an individual that bought some Iowa farms, but he lived near St. Louis. And when he applied for Social Security benefits, he wanted to use the conduct of his brother-in-law and the tenants that lived on the farm as his for purposes of creating net earnings for self-employment for Social Security purposes, and the court said he could. Then that got changed in 1974, and if an ag lease is involved for the production of agricultural or horticultural commodities, then the Congress said, starting in 74, you can't count somebody else's work as yours for purposes of satisfying material participation for Social Security purposes. Now, that's important because there are a whole bunch of other code sections that will route through those tests that are in the code for Social Security purposes. So sometimes your own work, obviously your work counts, but sometimes the work of somebody else on your behalf will not count to get you an associated tax benefit.
Right, that makes sense. Well, so what do farmers now need to keep in mind when satisfying material participation?
Well, they need to be talking with their tax and legal counsel to make sure particularly that their leases are structured properly in light of what it is they're trying to achieve, whether that's a tax benefit, whether that's estate planning, whether it's post-death estate planning in terms of succession planning for the family. You've got to have leasing arrangements structured properly. It's very important, and it affects so many areas that farmers get into, and often they don't realize it. But that conversation needs to be addressed by good legal and tax counsel.
Absolutely. The paperwork part of the job we don't necessarily enjoy, but that is so necessary. So what's the biggest takeaway?
Well, I think that is the takeaway. This is a very tricky part of tax planning and estate planning for farmers and ranchers. Make sure your leases are the way that you want them, not only from a legal standpoint, but also from a tax and an estate planning and business planning standpoint, too. And it requires a lot of work to stay on top of those things, but always keep your goals and objectives in mind and then draft leases accordingly.
All right, good advice. That's Roger McEowen with Washburn School of Law. Thank you for being with us today.